They mocked the black delivery man, until he fired them all. Marcus adjusted his grip on the package as he stepped into the sleek, marble-floored lobby of Sterling Enterprises. The moment he crossed the threshold, he felt it, the weight of dismissive stares, the silent judgment that clung to the air like humidity before a storm. He had been in places like this before, where wealth and privilege dripped from the walls, where men in tailored suits barely acknowledged workers in uniforms. He didn't need to look around to know how this would go. He had lived it too many times before. Before I go on, I would really appreciate it if you give this video a like, click the subscribe button down below. It would really encourage me to create more videos for you. Thank you so much. Alright, let's continue. Behind the front desk, a young man in a pressed white shirt and a smug grin barely looked up. His name tag read Todd. He leaned against the counter, eyes flicking from Marcus to the clipboard in front of him, then back again. Deliveries go through the back, Todd said without hesitation, already turning his attention elsewhere. Marcus remained still for a moment. He had been given specific instructions to bring this package directly to an executive, but Todd hadn't even asked for details. The man hadn't considered for a second that Marcus might be there for any other reason than to haul boxes. I was told to deliver this personally, Marcus said, keeping his voice level. Todd sighed, as if this were an inconvenience of the highest order. And who exactly told you that? His tone dripped with doubt, the kind reserved for someone who had clearly overstepped their place. Before Marcus could answer, a voice chimed in from nearby. Must be lost, someone muttered. A chuckle followed. Marcus glanced toward the source, a cluster of office workers near the elevators, all dressed in crisp business attire, watching him like an amusing spectacle. Among them, a woman with sharp, calculated eyes and an expensive watch, Lisa, pursed her lips before addressing him directly. Look, we're really busy here, she said. If you need to make a drop-off, use the loading dock like everyone else. Marcus inhaled slowly. The subtext was deafening. He didn't belong here. He wasn't supposed to walk through the front doors like an equal. He was meant to slip in unseen, leave the package, and disappear like a shadow in the background. He studied the faces before him, committing each expression to memory. The arrogance, the certainty that they were better than him. Marcus adjusted the package under his arm and gave a slow nod. Right, he murmured. Then, without another word, he turned his gaze toward the executive wing, the very place they were trying to keep him from. He already knew exactly what he was going to do next. Marcus didn't move toward the back entrance. Instead, he stayed exactly where he was, letting the silence stretch. Todd, still leaning on the counter, raised an eyebrow. I don't think you heard me, Todd said, his voice carrying that same casual arrogance. Deliveries go through the back. Marcus remained calm, but inside, a familiar irritation simmered beneath his composed expression. He'd seen this play out too many times before. The unspoken rules, the invisible barriers, the quiet dismissal of men who looked like him. I was told to bring this directly to Mr. Langston's office, Marcus said evenly. He didn't need to explain himself, but he was curious to see how far they'd take this. Lisa crossed her arms, her lips curling into something between amusement and irritation. And who exactly told you that? She asked. Because I find it hard to believe that our senior executive is personally requesting deliveries. One of the men by the elevator, Derek, scoffed. People like you don't get meetings with people like him, he added with a smirk. Marcus tilted his head slightly, studying Derek's expression. There was no hesitation in his words, no second guessing. Just certainty that Marcus was beneath them, that he was someone to brush aside without consequence. Todd sighed dramatically, rubbing his temple as if Marcus's presence alone was exhausting him. Look, man, he said. I don't know what kind of mix-up happened, but you're wasting your time. Just take the package where it belongs and stop holding up the lobby. Marcus held Todd's gaze for a moment longer before shifting his attention back to Lisa. He took in her posture, the dismissive tilt of her chin, the way her eyes flicked over him without really seeing him. Then, without a word, he shifted the package under his arm, took a step forward and walked past them, heading directly toward the executive wing. The moment Marcus stepped past the reception desk, the energy in the room shifted. Lisa's eyes widened slightly before narrowing in irritation. Todd straightened up, clearly not expecting Marcus to ignore his instructions. Hey, where do you think you're going? Todd barked, his voice sharp now, no longer just amused but openly hostile. Marcus didn't respond. He walked with purpose, his steps steady, his grip firm on the package. The office workers by the elevator exchanged glances, their smirks fading into confusion. People like Marcus didn't push back. They didn't defy the unspoken rules. Lisa's heels clicked against the polished floor as she moved to block his path. "Excuse me," she said coldly, her voice dropping to something just shy of a threat. "You can't just walk in like that." Marcus stopped, meeting her gaze with the same calm, unreadable expression he had worn since the moment he walked in. "And why is that?" he asked evenly. Lisa blinked, as if surprised by the question. "Because this area is restricted," she snapped. "For employees and authorized personnel only." Marcus let a beat of silence pass before speaking. "I see," he said. His tone remained neutral, but there was something in it, something just beneath the surface that made Lisa hesitate. Todd scoffed behind the desk. "Security's gonna love this," he muttered, already reaching for the phone. Before he could dial, a door at the far end of the office opened. The conversation stopped as every head turned. A tall man in a tailored navy suit stepped out, Mr. Langston, the senior executive himself. The moment Langston's eyes landed on Marcus, his expression changed instantly. His posture straightened, his lips parted slightly in surprise. "Sir," Langston blurted, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. I didn't realize you were here." The shift in the room was immediate. Lisa stiffened, her confidence faltering as confusion flickered across her face. Todd, still clutching the phone, hesitated mid-dial, his smirk vanishing. The office workers who had been watching with amusement just moments ago now stood frozen, eyes darting between Marcus and Mr. Langston. Marcus remained still, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to react. The silence around him said everything. Langston hurried forward, his polished shoes clicking against the floor, his entire demeanor shifting from composed executive to someone scrambling to fix a mistake. I wasn't expecting you so soon," he said, extending a hand. "If I had known, I would have arranged a proper welcome." Marcus adjusted the package under his arm, but made no move to shake Langston's hand. "I wanted to see things for myself," he said simply. Langston gave a tight nod, his eyes darting toward Lisa and Todd. It was only then that he seemed to register the way they were positioned, as if blocking Marcus's path, treating him as if he didn't belong. A flicker of realization crossed his face, followed quickly by discomfort. Lisa finally found her voice, though it was noticeably weaker than before. "Mr. Langston, is everything all right?" she asked carefully. Langston didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned to Marcus, waiting for his reaction. When none came, he cleared his throat and straightened his tie. "I assume you've already met some of our staff," he said. His tone was forced, like he was trying to smooth over a situation that had already spiraled out of his control. Marcus tilted his head slightly. "Oh, we've met," he said, his voice calm. "They were just explaining how things work around here." A heavy silence settled over the room. Todd swallowed hard. Lisa's fingers twitched at her side. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Langston exhaled slowly. "I see." His jaw tightened. "Let's take this conversation somewhere more private." Without another word, he gestured toward his office. This time, no one dared to stand in Marcus's way. Marcus followed Langston through the sleek glass doors of the executive office, leaving behind a stunned silence in the lobby. The office was expansive, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city skyline. A long conference table sat in the center, polished to a mirror sheen, flanked by high-backed leather chairs. Langston gestured toward a seat at the head of the table, but Marcus remained standing. The older man cleared his throat, moving toward his desk instead. He wasn't used to being the one on edge, but the weight of the situation was starting to settle on his shoulders. "I assume you saw enough," Marcus said finally, setting the package down on the table. His voice was calm, measured, but there was something underneath it, something that made Langston uneasy. Langston hesitated, adjusting the cuffs of his expensive suit. "I can assure you, this isn't how we train our employees," he said, his tone carefully diplomatic. "We have policies in place." Marcus let out a quiet, humorless chuckle. "Policies," he repeated. "Right." He glanced toward the glass doors, where shadows of the employees still lingered, likely straining to hear through the walls. "Policies don't mean much when the culture tells a different story." Langston sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Look, I won't make excuses," he admitted. "What happened out there, it was unacceptable." Marcus studied him for a long moment before speaking. "And yet it happened. Not just today. Not just to me." He let the words settle, watching Langston shift uncomfortably under the weight of them. Langston exhaled sharply. "So what happens now?" Marcus glanced at the nameplate on the desk, then back at Langston. A slow, knowing smile crossed his face. That depends, he said. Are you ready for a real change, or just another PR apology? Langston hesitated, his polished executive demeanor cracking at the edges. He had handled high-stakes negotiations, managed multimillion-dollar deals, but nothing had prepared him for this. Standing in front of Marcus, knowing that every decision from this point forward would determine the future of his company. Marcus let the silence stretch, watching the older man wrestle with his next move. You've got a decision to make, he said finally, his voice even. You can either fix the culture of this company from the ground up, or you can watch it fall apart when the world finds out how it really operates. Langston swallowed hard, nodding slowly. I understand, he admitted. This isn't just about what happened today, is it? Marcus tilted his head slightly. No, he said. This is about every worker who's been dismissed before they even had a chance to prove themselves. It's about what happens when people in power get too comfortable looking down on the ones who keep their businesses running. Langston let out a slow breath, his fingers tightening on the edge of his desk. You're right, he said. The words weren't easy for him, but there was no denying them. And I won't insult you by pretending that a single meeting is enough to fix this. Marcus nodded once. Good, he said. Then let's start by holding everyone accountable. Langston's jaw tightened. You mean? I mean everyone, Marcus cut in smoothly, his gaze flicking toward the glass doors. Todd, Lisa, Derek, every name and face that stood by and let it happen. If they can't adapt to a company that actually values its people, they don't belong here. Langston hesitated for only a second before nodding. Agreed. Outside, the employees who had laughed and dismissed Marcus as a nobody were still waiting. They had no idea that the decision had already been made, their fates sealed by the very man they had tried to push aside. The glass doors swung open, and Marcus stepped out first, his expression unreadable. Langston followed closely behind, his face tight with unspoken resolve. The employees who had mocked Marcus just moments ago were still lingering, their nervous whispers dying the second they saw Langston's face. Lisa straightened, forcing a smile. Mr. Langston, she started, her voice overly polite. We. Langston raised a hand, cutting her off. Not a word, he said sharply. His gaze swept over Todd, Lisa, and Derek, the three who had been so eager to put Marcus in his place. All of you. My office. Now. The color drained from Todd's face. Derek's usual smugness vanished. Lisa, who had carried herself with such superiority, suddenly looked as though she wanted to be anywhere but here. The office was silent as they shuffled past Marcus, unable to meet his gaze. He didn't need to say anything. The weight of their own actions was enough. As they disappeared into Langston's office, Marcus turned toward the other employees, the ones who had watched from the sidelines. Some looked uncomfortable. Others quickly busied themselves with their work, pretending they hadn't been complicit in the moment. Marcus let them sit with their discomfort. Change wasn't just about firing a few bad employees. It was about shifting the entire foundation of a company. Langston would deal with Todd, Lisa, and Derek personally, but Marcus had already made his decision. This company would no longer be one where bias and arrogance dictated who was worthy of respect. And as he turned to leave, he didn't need to say another word. His presence had already rewritten the rules of the game.